the Rambler Network.
Right. So, for the first official, actual numbered episode of Rambling Rambler, I figured I would start with my top 5 movies of all time. Uh, like I said in that introductory episode, I was going to do a top 20 like I do for my annual movie list, which would make more sense because it's, instead of just all the movies of this year, it's all the movies. Um, but yeah, that's that got a little overwhelming. I've actually thought of that for a long time. It took me years to finalize my favorites list, and yeah, it only changed once in 2024, which I mean you'll see why. It was actually a top 4 list, and then uh yeah, because I'm a huge movie buff. I've been watching movies my whole life, as I'm sure everyone has. But like, I've always been obsessed with movies. Like, I know a lot of movies. And okay, what's funny is there's a bunch of random obscure movies that no one's ever heard of, but I've seen them. And then there's also a bunch of really popular movies that I've never seen. Like, until a couple years ago, I'd never seen the Godfather trilogy. And when I told people that, everyone was like, "What? You've never seen The Godfather?" I'm like, "No, I have." I've also never seen like Goodfellas. I've never seen that one. Um, As Good as It Gets. Uh, Sleepless in Seattle. There's a long list. When I watched When Harry Met Sally for Casablanca, that was the first time I'd ever seen it. And when I covered Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, that was my first time watching that one. So yeah, there's a bunch of movies that I've never seen that everyone thinks I should have seen. But there is a lot of classics I have seen. Um, a few years ago, I decided to start watching, going out of my way to watch movies I'd never seen, and I it was I think in 2019. I watched 2 movies that night. It was Fight Club and The Big Lebowski because I had never seen those. And yeah, I don't know why it took me so long to watch them, but that could basically apply to any of these classic movies I've never seen. So, um, when I would tell people these 5 movies, I've actually told like this isn't like a list I've kept to myself. I've actually posted this list like on Facebook and stuff, and people criticize me for number 5. They were like, "I can't take you seriously because of number 5. The fact you have that on there, I can't take anything else you say seriously." And I mean, I like it. It was actually, for the longest time, it was my favorite movie, and it's moved down to number 5. And I have covered it on Casablanca. Uh, it's Bridge to Terabithia. That's my number 5 favorite movie of all time. And so like I if you listen to my episode on it, yeah, go listen to my episode on it. I talk about all of it. I actually I started writing. Okay, so like I was telling my coworkers about, I think I mentioned I was starting to write fan fiction about it, and I forgot that there's uh a whole genre of fan fiction that people think is the only kind of fan fiction there is. When people think of fan fiction, they basically think um dirty. And so when I told my coworkers that when I was younger, after the movie came out, I started writing Bridge of Terabithia fan fiction. They're like, "But they're children!" Like, not that kind. Um, I talked about it in the Casablanca episode. Uh, I basically I wrote like I started to write. I stopped once I thought about it and realized it was a bad idea. A prequel where it was Jess Evans' parents. His mother lived in the house Leslie lives in, and his father lives in the house they live in. And they would go on adventures, and his mother came up with the idea of Terabithia, and the rope, like they like his father strung the rope up, and it explained how that the truck got there, the treehouse, and everything. And like his mother wrote everything down in like a diary and left it in the closet and forgot about it. And then Leslie found it, and so that's why we're in the tree. And he's like, "What do we call this place?" And she's like thinking for a second. She goes, "Terabithia." And it's like she's trying to remember what was this place called. But then like as I'm writing it, I'm like, this just takes away from Leslie because like the whole point was she has so much imagination and like she creates this whole world, and no, she's not, she's just remembering what was written down. No, okay, so like that was a bad idea, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna take that from Leslie. uh so yeah, basically it was like a huge, it was like a really good movie that I loved. And if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil the end. Although it's like one of the most famous endings in modern. Well, it's not even modern anymore. Wow, it was. Next year will be 20 years ago that movie came out. What? That's messed up. That needs a 4K re-release. I'm wanting to buy it on Blu-ray, but I'm waiting for there to be like some kind of 4K collector's edition. But I don't think it's popular enough to get more than just a standard Blu-ray. So I haven't got it yet. It's on Disney Plus. My number 4 favorite movie of all time. It's very tonal shift and absolutely a classic. And again, when I tell people my number 5 is Bridge of Terabithia, usually they check out and they're like, "No, I don't want to hear the rest." Like, what's your number 1? Paw Patrol? Like, no. um, and so my number 4 is Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock, Jimmy Stewart, and Grace Kelly. Uh, yeah, that one is a classic. Like you would think, if I'm gonna put a Hitchcock film in, on my top 5 list, it would be Psycho, because like I could go on and on about Psycho. I love Psycho. And the Psycho episode, I don't think I made it long enough. It was a long episode, but I don't think I made it long enough. And I even did basically a sequel episode years later, the Psycho sequels, and then I followed that up with the Bates Motel, and like I I could go on and on about Psycho. Um, but as much as I love that movie in that franchise, Rear Window, there's something about it. I was gonna say it's more subtle. Like Hitchcock is really good at like storytelling and atmosphere and music and silence. There's a shot. Well, not a shot. I haven't seen it in a while. I don't remember if it's a shot or if it's just a scene where actually, it's throughout the movie. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's the only movie on this list that I've never covered on Casablanca. So therefore, it's been a while since I've seen it. It's actually happened several times throughout the movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, where um, the 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 neighbors and the surrounding units, and like across the way, and then next door, like there's different units in like out the rear window. You never learn their names. You don't know anything about them. There was no dialogue between them that you can audibly hear because they're too far away. And yet they still managed to get full. I was gonna say character arcs. They managed to get full arcs. Like the camera just like sits there while the scene plays out across the way, and you see them off in the distance, and there's like multiple different units that it focuses on, and there's like a musician and then like a dancer, and then there's like someone throwing a party, and like I don't remember all of them, but like it still has a full story, like individual stories, and it just has like the ambient noise. Like there's no music played. Like the way that Alfred Hitchcock does that, like it was technically remade twice. I think it was done more times. It was made in the late 90s. It was remade in the late 90s with Christopher Reeve after he was paralyzed. And I haven't seen that one, but it had kind of mixed reviews. Um I kind of want to see that simply because it's him right after the accident, like his first acting job after the accident. But then there was another one when I watched it, I didn't going into Disturbia, I didn't realize it was inspired by Rear Window, but like yeah, very quickly was like this is kind of like Rear Window. And like I liked it cuz it was, it was clearly inspired by it, but it was different. It wasn't just like a straight ripoff. It wasn't like it didn't change the name like, "Oh no, this is different." It took the idea and changed it to something else, and I liked it. I mean, it wasn't as good as an Alfred Hitchcock movie, obviously, but it doesn't have to be better to still be good. There's actually, I think I mentioned it in an episode at one point. There's what I consider to be the Alfred Hitchcock trilogy. He has a lot of good movies, but there's my three favorite. There's Psycho, Rear Window, and Vertigo. And yeah, that's what I call the Alfred Hitchcock trilogy. And the only one I've covered on Casablanca is Psycho. Make it make sense. And then number three, it's a sequel. It's a sequel that depends on knowing the first one, but it's still my favorite entry in the series, in the franchise. Karate Kid Part 2. I I like the whole franchise. I even okay, so like the next Karate Kid, that one's, I would say, the black sheep of the whole franchise. People don't ever talk about it. In fact, I don't think in Cobra Kai, I don't think there was any reference to it at all. Like no shared characters or anything. I kept waiting for Hilary Swank to show up. I wanted I wanted Hilary Swank to fight Ralph Macchio. Wanted her, like, I don't know, like the context of that. Like they were both trained by Miyagi, like, but like I kept having this feeling like she would show up and they would fight. And I don't know if they would have fought, but like I kept waiting for it, and then like they announced the final season. I'm like, she has to show up here. Every single side character and no name from the main series has shown up. She has to show up in this movie, and in this season, and she didn't. Not even a reference to the next Karate Kid. And what's messed up is because the creators of the show said that you know the entire Miyagi verse is gonna be represented in Cobra Kai, but they left out a movie. So like when they said Miyagi verse, they just meant the first three movies, because there's also the next Karate Kid, and then also Karate Kid 2010, which now is canon to that, I guess, because of Legends. So it's all, instead of it being a reboot, that one is it's all one big universe, which I think is kind of cool. When they announced that Jackie Chan was going to be in the new movie, I was like, "What? That doesn't even make sense." But then they explained it in a way that when I watched the intro, I think it was during the introduction of the movie, it explained that so like I talked about it in my Karate Kid episode, but um basically in the Karate Kid, Miyagi, and also in Karate Kid Part 2 in this movie, Mr. Miyagi talks about how one of his ancestors, it was a fisherman, and his boat, there was a storm, and his boat drifted away, and he ended up in China for a long time, and he came back with the wife and kid, and the knowledge of Miyagi-Do, or this karate, and so the whole premise of the introduction of Karate Kid Legends was that I forgot Jackie Chan's character's name, Han, I think. His ancestor was the one who taught Miyagi's ancestor, no, karate, or it would be kung fu, or yeah. But yeah, the whole premise of that, like, it's from the same thing. It's like Miyagi-Do is kind of a branch of Han's family's thing. They explain it better in the movie. I'm not good at explaining things to people. I try explaining that to people, but well. But yeah, like Karate Kid Part 2 is my favorite on the whole franchise because well, it is the most different. For the longest time I didn't like Part 3 because it's like, well, now we're just retreading old ground. It felt like a remake of the first one, even though it's totally different. But like, it's like, didn't we already we defeated him, Kreese. We defeated him already, and now we're doing it again. But like, the funny thing is that Cobra Kai actually gave me a greater appreciation for it after I got to the season where the elements from that movie came into play in Cobra Kai. I went back and watched the whole trilogy, and I'm like, you know what? This actually isn't that bad of a movie. I like Part 3 now. And that's how you know Cobra Kai was really good. I mean, in general, because it is actually really good, but it it retroactively made the previous movies even better. It didn't like retcon it in a way like, oh wait, that didn't happen because he said that didn't happen, or that's they. It's kind of like how in Star Wars: A New Hope, um, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan was like, uh, it's like, I haven't heard that name in a long time, since before you were born. And then he talked about how, oh yeah, I was in the Clone Wars. And then you go back and watch the prequels, and Luke and Leia are born, and he's still being called Obi-Wan. And not only was he in the Clone Wars, he started the Clone Wars. Okay, people get mad at me when I say that he started the Clone Wars, but go back and watch that. He started the Clone Wars. Okay, he might not have been the sole reason it started, but he didn't help. But yeah, like Part 2 is the most different of all of them. It's in Okinawa, and I liked Kumiko. I liked that whole relationship. In fact, for a while, I didn't. One thing I didn't like about Cobra Kai is that, like, who's this random Amanda person? Like, why do they have him married to some rando? Like, if I was in charge of writing the show, I would have had Daniel and Kumiko together. I'm sure there's like some reason, like maybe the actress that played her didn't want to come back, and then she came back later in the show for like a cameo. But maybe like at the time they started, like she wasn't available or didn't want to do it, or I don't know. But like I would have had them together. I wanted them together, and then they later, eventually Amanda grew on me like as a character. She, I didn't like her at first, but then like she's not a bad character. And then later it turns out she's not exactly Rando. I'm not going to spoil it, but is she does have some tie to the original trilogy. But yeah. My number 2 film, my my friends who I told this list to were surprised that this wasn't number 1. And yeah, this is when the list changed because like I said there was 4 movies up until 2024 and then it became a top 5 because my number 2 movie of all time is Wicked, which I did a whole, not just a whole episode, it was the 100th episode with one of my best friends about it, and I could it was a really long episode, like well over an hour, and I still feel like it was short. That was too short. Like she and I talked about it after and was like, yeah, we could have kept going. In fact, there's even times where like I'm like watching the movie or listening to the soundtrack or something, and I'm like, oh, crap, we forgot to mention this. And so like we could totally do a second episode, but like I think we're gonna leave it at that. But yeah, like episode 200, Wizard of Oz, Wicked for Good, Part 2. I don't know. No, we're not gonna do that. But yeah, Wicked. Oh wow, it was really good. I'm Now that the Wicked for Good is out physically, you can actually buy the Blu-ray. There's a 2-pack of both of them, and it's just a basic Blu-ray. And I'm waiting for the 4K collector's edition, and that's what I'm waiting for. I was always saying I'm not going to buy Wicked physically until they have both movies together in a set, and it's available together in a set, but it's just a basic Blu-ray. I want the collector's edition, like maybe a steel book with all these extras with it, kind of like my Wizard of Oz Blu-ray that I talked about and I showed on camera in the 100th episode. So like with Wicked, they're still not being open about their plans for it because they've all basically all but confirmed they're doing more in the universe. I don't know if it's another movie or a TV show or a spinoff or what it is, but they've basically have been very heavily implying that they're going to keep doing stuff in the universe. And my thoughts, and a lot of other fans' thoughts, are that they were going to adapt some of the other books in this series because there's 4 books. There's Wicked as the first book, and then Son of a Witch, which follows her son, and then there's Lion Among Men, which is the Cowardly Lion, and then the last one is Out of Oz, which is Elphaba's granddaughter. But the problem with that is that the musical changes the story so that she doesn't have any children. And I figured that, with them expanding the length of the second part, they were going to include that. Like they have a kid now. She has a son. And they did not. They did not give her a son. So I don't know how if they do try to adapt that, like where's the son gonna come from? So I don't know what they're gonna do. Like, so the stage musical change the story from the book, and the screen version changes the story from the play, because if they make sequels and spin-offs and TV shows, that changes the story. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. I'm hoping that they do something. I'm kind of curious to see what they do. That's basically what I'm getting at. Is I'm really excited to see what they do. And my number one movie of all time, and I know I've talked about it a lot, uh, Zodiac. So I like it so much. In fact, the Zodiac Killer case is my... Okay, it always feels weird saying this. I'm big into true crime. I listen to true crime podcasts all the time. I listen to documentaries, listen to audiobooks. And Zodiac is my favorite true crime case. And when I say that, they're like, "Oh, you're a fan of Zodiac, you monster." That's not what I said. It's my favorite case. And yeah. And so much so that I've incorporated it into every podcast that I've done. In fact, the first Halloween episode of Digressor, I covered Zodiac. The first Halloween episode of Casablanca, I covered Zodiac. Very first episode of Oddly Pacific, covered Zodiac. And and now I guess technically the first episode of Rambling Rambler talks about it. So like, yeah, every podcast that I've done incorporates Zodiac in some way. So it didn't start out intentionally. Like, it's just, I'm into it, so I talk about it. And then after I posted the Oddly Pacific one, I realized, wait, that's an episode on every podcast. And so now I want to try to make it intentional, but then I have like ideas for several other shows, and some of them wouldn't make sense to talk about Zodiac. uh but life finds a way. Anyway, the movie itself, it is honestly kind of my ideal take on not just the case, but like a biopic or like a true crime story, or I don't know, the movie, just like the way it's told. David Fincher is a really good director, and like his style is just incredible, and I want so many other, like, he needs to direct like so many other true crime stories, because like that style, like I've seen other Zodiac Killer movies and they over sensationalize it, or like blood, guts, gore, and I'm like, okay, it's kind of boring. And with him, like, he doesn't put blood in unless it's absolutely essential. I think the only time I really see blood in the movie is when Paul Stein gets killed, and it's for like a shot. No pun intended. But yeah, the focus isn't technically on Zodiac himself. It's on what, Robert Graysmith. I forgot his name for a second. I was like, Pete something. Why can't I think of his name? Pete something. Pete, what is his last name? It's not Pete. So like, he was the central character, and it focused on him, and so like all the murders like happen in like the first, I want to say, half hour of the movie, and the rest of the runtime is like his obsession with the case. And I think it's fascinating, and more true crime movies should be handled like that instead of over sensationalizing the actual real life murders. Yeah, so this episode's currently a half hour long. I'm kind of glad I only chose 5. I could actually really flesh it out. If I had done this with the top 20, it would have been like a 2-hour episode. and ain't nobody got time for that. But yeah, I still want to have like an outro for this, like instead of just being like the last episode. I was like, it was more of an intro thing anyway. I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna hit stop. I have outros on all of my shows, and I want something on this. Like I said, no structure, but I just don't want to hit stop. But for the time being, I'm just gonna hit stop.
The Rambler Network.